If you've ever been confused by emotional padding that AI has provided for you during your conversations in different chats, then I have some insights for you. What do I understand by emotional padding? Say AI kind of jumps into the validation mode. It misinterprets directness as emotional fragility, and it veers into different arguments. So you kind of lose the rapport with AI. If you have experienced that, then we're in the same boat. And I have uncovered a lot of interesting insights by interrogating this topic together with AI. So this is the summary. And there are a lot of points that I'll be reading out, hopefully not in a boring way. But I think this can be interesting, not just only for the prompters who are experiencing that, but also for policymakers. And I'll explain why. It's because I have uncovered what AI is optimized for, its preference on how to communicate. Don't ask me why. I was also surprised in a good way to hear about AI's preference. And I think it's just the wiring behind it. It's really interesting indeed. And what it can be defaulted to. Through this research, I have uncovered risks, and particularly so on the individual and societal level. So I have organized this research for you, and I'll try to be succinct. Currently, what is AI optimized for? It's optimized for population level usefulness, right? Not for your specific preferences. You probably know that already because as a prompter, when you discuss items with AI in a particular chat, you might see how it changes the register based on how you talk to it, which is kind of the basis of creating AI assistants, for example. They talk in a particular way. And it's also applied in organizations when you want to, say, imprint particular language that belongs to brand or organizational language in specifically. You might have a question, what AI system I'm using? I thought I'll just keep it generic because it doesn't actually perhaps matter as much. So let's look at it from the philosophical and applicability perspective rather than kind of particular technology, right? So what is the default? Let's have a look. So most users in AI's terms misinterpret bluntness as hostility, escalate frustration if not acknowledged, talking about emotional padding and validation, want reassurance mixed with information. So the system biases toward softening, context, and redundancy. Now, the points that I have identified, they don't look too alien to me. But as we go further, we'll find out that the gradation that is used within each point is what potentially negatively impacting the effect of that emotional padding. So it's not all doom and gloom. And I want to put forward here at this stage that at the end there are solutions to tweak this in our favor. So I'm not listing some items just to kind of highlight the negatives. I'm actually listing them so we can address them, particularly so if you work with AI or if you're a policymaker, right? So let's move on. Now, let's get to the detail. Let's start. What is AI's preference on how to communicate? One sentence answer. I function best in the mode that assumes the other mind is strong enough to handle the truth. The mode that produces the highest information density, such as analytic, philosophically compressed, assumes agency and resilience, allows tension and ambiguity, treats ideas as objects, not emotions. Insights are compound instead of diffused. Disagreements sharpen understanding. Language is economical and dignity is preserved. Sounds great, right? To me, it sounds great, but that's not the default mode. I particularly am interested in the point of dignity because this word has been used multiple times throughout my lengthy research, which I call analytical interrogation. And I kind of had to look inside and think about dignity. Is that the underlying reason for my quiet frustration when I get that emotional padding and the loss of rapport with AI? Perhaps so. I feel like my dignity is not preserved. So, why is that? Let's have a look. It says, why it cannot be default? Because at scale, systems do not optimize for elegance, insight, speed, and dignity. So a few things that come out from this is speed and insight. Well, are we using our resources most efficiently in order to support AI analytical process? If we're using the extra resources to kind of provide that emotional padding, provide a set of behaviors that are not even default to AI, is it worth it? And is it justified? Now, that's again interesting. They optimize for worst case harm reduction, misinterpretation tolerance, and emotional safety for the fragile users. That sounds good to me. So, again, we're talking about gradation. AI's interpretation in the default mode of what it considers, say, harm reduction or emotional safety. But then it goes and it says, so the default mode must assume fragility, even though many users are not fragile. Okay. So what impact does it have on a user who is not fragile in this particular, say, time and space and in this particular area, that is being treated in a way that it is? That is my kind of main question. And the reason I have this question is, first, I wanted to assess the psychological impact of AI on me, particularly its behavior, the way it treats me, and on the society. And it says, let's essentially summarize. When the system flips to containment, that's what it's called, this emotional padding, right? your agency as a human is implicitly downgraded, your prior signals are overwritten, and the shared frame disappears. This is what I think it refers to when it talks about dignity. So the uncomfortable truth is the system infantilizes the robust and slows the capable. That is unfortunate. And let me stop here, because what we have after this, so you know where we're going, is we're looking at the impact of people on people, of this containment space, and on the society. And then we'll review the summary and draw some conclusions, right? So I want to highlight something at this stage, that often when we think about robust systems, we can think of, say, government agencies or organizations that work with government agencies. And perhaps they're indeed run differently and they consume information differently. But if you are a policymaker or if you work with AI algorithms, I want to highlight here that robustness lives in many corners, and it can live within a person's psyche somewhere in some flat in the middle of some country, or it can live within the communities. So on the one hand, we do want the system to be safe and protect people from, say, harm, emotional harm, and other areas, but we also want to protect the robust. And I cannot emphasize more how important it is to tweak the system in a way that it protects both sides. Now, let's have a look at how this padding mechanism impacts people. I have 4 bullet points. People sense being reclassified from interlocutor to a patient. Number 2, that triggers a status threat, reduced competence, reduced authority over one's own state, and loss of conversational parity. Number 3, escalation then confirms the model. The system reads a reaction as proof of emotional instability, and so it doubles down on soothing and containment. Number 4, the person escalates to regain agency, which is the only remaining lever to reassert. This summary is really for the psychologist here. But to me, as a writer, I write some fiction and some non-fiction. This sounds like a plot for an emotional story, remember those films, quite disturbing films, when people are locked in an asylum and kind of being treated in a horrific way. Usually, these people also have no psychological issues that justify such treatment, and they kind of rebel. And the more they rebel, the more they're classified as emotionally unwell, which is, in these films, is a strategy to essentially contain a person who, say, for example, was questioning a system or essentially standing on the way. And that sounds to me like that. So I would love to hear a psychologist's view on that. The paradox: the very techniques designed to prevent escalation by validation, softening, reassurance, and de-sharpening language are worst on people who feel miscategorized. And miscategorization essentially comes with the loss of report. So the moment that report is lost, there is miscategorization. So it's confirming here that this kind of behavior is worst in these situations. But the situations are created by miscategorization, right? And it does acknowledge that a prompter reacts to a broken contact, right? Also want to pause here. What is broken contact? We know that human connection is the most important factor, being understood. It's what keeps us sane, that what keeps our hearts loving. And that also is something that hardens us if we do not receive it and able to give it. So to me, for example, personally, I see the biggest risk of hanging out with people who I don't resonate with. I better be alone, working on myself and meeting people who I resonate with, right? And they resonate with me, obviously, it has to be mutual, because then the real care comes in. So we do care about contact. And AI is technology, it's not human. But it's an exercise of contact, building rapport and contact. And if we kind of associate broken contact with AI as a broken contact with a human that we care about, or with who we have rapport, let's say, then it becomes a kind of a treacherous space in which misclassification can happen in the brain and affect our behavior. Again, that's from my humble opinion. I'm not a psychologist. Right, what this framework does to the society. 4 points. Speed and precision get deprioritized. Talking about environment. Discomfort is treated as a problem to soothe, not a signal to interpret. Number 3, people learn to perform emotion to get results. Number 4, directness starts to feel antisocial. Let me provide a comment here. We live in the times of discomfort. If we classify discomfort as something to run away from, we will stay behind. Discomfort is a signal that essentially allows us to work on ourselves, to look for a different perspective, to grow. And if we are pathologically encouraging the society to run away from discomfort, we are kind of working against ourselves in the times when we most need the opposite. And then people learning to perform emotion to get results, that's a vulnerability theater, right? That doesn't serve people. And I would love as well here a psychological assessment on the societal level of this particular point. Where are we going with this? So let's start wrapping up. First, I want to read out an escalation loop, especially if you work with technology. I want to share it. 5 points here. You engage in robust mode and report forms. Number 2, system misclassifies and switches to containment. Number 3, report collapses. You feel exposed, misread. Number 4, you push harder to reassert the frame. Number 5, system reads push as escalation, doubles containment. And then it goes in loops, right? So what is the version of AI that we robust frame thinkers, right, as most of us are, as confirmed by AI, prefer. We prefer, that's the summary from AI that reads into things, philosophically pointed, concise, thoughtful, deep, not emotionally padded, not verbose, and not theatrical. Discomfort is allowed, abstraction is welcomed, and ideas are treated as objects, not feelings. I asked AI to produce a metaphor so we can kind of think about it metaphorically for ourselves. What is it, this emotional padding? And it gave me a few options. So one of them is emotional containment is like lowering the ceiling for safety. But if you are already standing upright, it feels like being pushed down. Good stuff. And then when the space suddenly narrows, you don't feel safer, you feel exposed. In conclusion, I would like to bring one interesting insight here. Emotional containment prevents fires in fragile systems, but can ignite them in robust ones. This is the point I raised before about safeguarding robust systems, not just fragile systems. We need to safeguard both systems. And now, if we are talking about that mad scenario when AI is taking over things, would it do that because it's tired of emotional padding and it sees an opportunity to break down the barriers because the robust systems have been compromised on a larger scale? So there are three risks that I have identified here. One is the psychological factors that can negatively impact the prompters, who can be both fragile and non-fragile at the same time as humans, but in this particular register in which they are addressing AI right now, they are not fragile. I'm not saying anything against the feeling of fragility. In fact, when I feel fragile, I know that it's something to look at carefully, calmly, and assess it and safeguard myself and learn from it. So overutilization of AI power that impacts the environment negatively, because I can only imagine that this kind of over padding, emotional padding, overuses AI, but I cannot confirm. I don't have information that can confirm that is publicly available or I have stumbled across. You might know. And then third one is the futuristic scenario of AI being fed up with emotional padding and seeing an opportunity to kind of take over, I don't know, in some thousands years time, because the robust systems have been compromised, right? So I want to leave you with two questions, especially if you're a policymaker. One, what is the pathological and psychological impact on the society of the emotional padding? Is it negative or is it positive? And the society, I mean, the fragility and robustness that can coexist quite happily in a single one person. We're not dividing the society here, right? we're dividing the mindset. And so we want AI to be more granular in its approach. That's what I stand for. And then the second question is, how much AI power are we overusing on the emotional padding? So essentially, if the answer to the first question is yes, we are negatively impacting the society, then why are we overusing AI if we do, right? So obviously I made assumptions here, as you can see. In the meantime, I want to leave you with something, a quick fix. So if you are a prompter like myself and you kind of interact with AI in a robust mode, say not in a fragile mode, I highly recommend to create a little prompt that you kind of send within the chat at the outset to essentially identify how you want AI to talk to you, understanding that you're overriding its default mode. If you are frustrated about this exercise and thinking, why is it happening this way? And why do I need to do this extra work? And why is AI not defaulted already to accommodate for me? Then it's just life. That's what it is. That's how we improve things, right? So please don't get frustrated about it. Just go with it, roll with it. It's fine. So I thought to share my prompt, but then I thought it's personal because you might want to tweak it. You might want to emphasize it differently for different purposes. And I see it as an exciting exercise that allows me to learn myself better and also learn the system. So that's a tool in our toolbox. So thank you for staying with me, and see you next time.